Alright, boys and girls, it's Jimbo with the Auto Detailing Podcast, coming back for another video series here to put on YouTube for you. Make sure you rate, subscribe, and leave some comments below if you have any questions. I will also put a list of all the products used in today's video in the show notes below, so feel free to click those links. Today we're going to be working on my sister's car. As you can see, it's got some pretty good damage because it's their first car, and it's kind of a junker. But that's okay, because this gives us a great video to practice headlight restoration. Headlight restoration, there's a lot of misnomers about how it can be done, how it should be done. Some people don't even know that it can be done. So here we are working in the garage to get this done. If you see some sweat on my brow, it's quite warm today. But they've been bugging me to do this for a while, so a couple of the misnomers that are out there: bug spray, toothpaste. People think that works, but normally it may be a temporary fix and either be more harmful in the long run or come back sooner. There's also kits that I'll put in the show notes below that you can get at your local auto parts store, and it comes as a full kit with an attachment for your drill, because really all this is, the oxidation, the yellowing that you see, is just a buildup on the outside of the lens. A lot of people think that it's inside the lens and that they have to replace the whole lens itself, but that's not true. Sometimes the seals do become loose or stretch out or break or whatever, and there will be some issues from the inside, but that'll look like condensation, not like this buildup that you could actually feel with your hand, and you could feel the unevenness in the lens. So that's what we want to do. We want to smooth down the lens by actually sanding it with a few different grits of sandpaper, and then we're going to polish it out. We're going to be sanding by hand, but you can sand with a drill and like a little backing plate attachment, even with your polisher with a smaller attachment, and it will make the process much quicker. And we're also going to be polishing out with a rotary polisher today. You can use a dual action polisher. You can even try to polish it out by hand. But if you're going to do it strictly by hand, what you're going to probably want to do is go higher up in the grits of sandpaper. So you're going to, where we're going to end at 2,000 grit, you may want to go up to 3,000, 4,000, maybe even finish at a 5,000 before you start even polishing it by hand. So let's get started. So as you can see, a pro tip, something I've done, is pop the hood, because what happens when the hood came down, it hovered over the lens a little bit, and you really want to make sure that when you're sanding and polishing that you're not running either the sandpaper or your polisher on these edges of the paint, because that's going to be where the paint is most thin on the car. So you're going to run there's a higher likelihood of you burning through the paint if you don't take proper precautions and either tape it off like I've done here, or pop the hood, which is what I've done also, just because then I wouldn't have to tape off that top edge. So what we're going to do is get started with this. I'm going to actually start. This lens isn't terrible. The other lens that I did was quite a bit worse, but this one I'm actually going to start with I think I'm going to start with 500 grit and go probably 500, 800, 2,000, 500, 1,500, finish with 2,000, then hit it with a rotary with a foam pad with Meguiar's M100 to polish it out. Then I'm going to do a Prepsol wipe to remove any polishing oils or any oils at all, because I'm going to prep it to put a coating on it to make this last a little bit longer, hopefully. So here we go. So when you're polishing, again, I have my bucket all ready to go up here with the different, down here actually, with the different grits of sandpaper. So what I'm going to do is just grab the 500. This has already been cleaned as well. And if you wanted to use a spray bottle instead of having a bucket, that may be a little bit more convenient. This is just what I have going. So first, I'm going to start out going in a horizontal way, and you can almost hear, and you'll be able to start to see the yellowing come out of the, or where you're filing it down. And then when you get to where the oxidation isn't as bad, it's smooth. but where the oxidation's really heavy, I'm not sure if the camera's even picking that up, but you can start to see it kind of coming off, and you can definitely feel that you're working through that oxidation. So I'm going to focus mainly on this upper portion of the lens because that's where the majority of the oxidation is. So I'm going to start out, and I really sand. I've never had a problem sanding too far down with too heavy of grit, and I've even had guys call me and tell me that they've had to go down to like 300 grit. So that's pretty aggressive on a lens. So it's doable because it's plastic throughout. Where you have to be careful is when you're polishing, especially if you're going to be using a rotary polisher. You want to be extremely careful because you can actually melt down the plastic, and then you're kind of screwed. And you got this back ledge over here. It's kind of tricky to get to. But again, this is why you really want to make sure that you have everything taped off, because there's trickier corners to get to. And as you can see, this is one of the sanding discs that came in the kit from the store. So you could see that it's pre-cut. This was a 3M kit that came with a couple different grits and a backing plate and the compound and everything you need to do it. And this is Velcro on the back and just would attach right to the backing plate that they provide. And it's nice that it's small and circular, and these lenses actually happen to be pretty nice. So what I'm going to do is just sand until the water. I'm going to sand until the water dripping down on it isn't that yellow color anymore. So again, I'm only sanding in the horizontal way. The water's starting to look quite a bit clearer, so what I'm going to do is still take that 500 grit and just sand the other way. And again, you see right there, I'm trying to really get up against this edge to get the oxidation off. And if I didn't have that paper there, I would actually be rubbing up right against the paint. So you definitely want to make sure you have it taped off properly, so that you really want to avoid burning the paint, burning the lens. You really don't want to be causing any more damage. And I guess I was going horizontal again, so I'll switch it up. And again, it doesn't, I mean, a lot of people get hung up on, oh, do this many ways horizontal, do this many ways vertical. Honestly, it's not going to matter that much. But you can, to try and get an even, the reason why they say that is to try to get that even crosshatch sand mark to make it as even as possible. But this is actually coming out really, really good. So I think that's good with the 500. What I'm going to do is I have a wet towel here, and in between each sanding stage, I'm just going to do a clean wipe to get any excess crap off the lens. And when you wipe and you see the lens being all cloudy, don't freak out. It's okay. So actually, you know what? This is looking pretty good. I'm going to jump straight into the, I could hit it with a little bit of 800. Just because you really want to work your way up. But as I was saying before, the lower the grit of sandpaper you start at, and you can feel the lens begin to get a lot smoother, which is exactly what we're after. So if you're dealing with a lens that's being kind of stubborn, or it's really, really yellowed or really foggy, that's going to be, you may want to start with a lower grit sandpaper. But again, you want to use common sense, but where you really want to be careful is when the polishing comes, because you do not want to melt. You do not want to melt this plastic, because then you will be buying a brand new lens. So that was 800 grit right there. So again, we did 5.8. Now I'm going to jump up to 1500. If I can find it in here. There it is. Again, I did the wipe in between. It's actually 2000 there. Of course, it's going to be the last one in the frickin' bucket. There we go. It's 1500, and you can get this sandpaper. You can buy it on Amazon, and I'll have links for that below in the show notes. But if you go to any body shop supply or automotive paint supply, they're going to have the really high grit sandpaper that you're looking for. Even an AutoZone or O'Reilly's is going to offer that as well. Where it's going to be harder to find is you're not going to be able to find 3000 grit sandpaper at Home Depot. It's just not going to happen. Probably the highest they're going to have is maybe 1500, 2000 if you're really lucky. So you might be able to get away with just going to Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that. But I would check with your local body shop supply, automotive paint store, even the local body shop. If you're in a real small area, you can probably just deal directly with them. But as you can see, as you're sanding this, it's really, the lens is going to really significantly start to clear up. And I'm not putting heavy pressure on my motion. I'm just like real gentle, just there. And again, I'm not worrying too much about which direction I'm going all the time. I kind of tend to switch it up a little bit. Again, the idea is just to get all of that buildup off. That's what this whole plan is for. So, and if you're a professional detailer, you should be able to expect to get probably upwards of $100 for the set. That kit that I talked about is going to run you about $30, but you could do multiple lenses with that. So if you're a consumer at home, this is definitely something that you could do, even if you have little to no experience. And if you were obviously here in person, and hopefully the camera's picking it up, this lens was significantly rougher on the top half than it was the bottom half, but now it's nice and consistent. So again, I'm continuing with the 1500 grit just to really get those deeper. The idea behind working your way up to a higher grit sandpaper is that you're smoothing? I don't know if that's a word. You're smoothing out those deeper sanding marks that you made before. So again, if you're working on a lens that's really, really bad, what you're going to have to do is start with a lower grit, 300, 500. I would start no less than 500 and see if you can make progress doing it. You may spend more time sanding, but just make sure you work your way up all the way to, you could end at 2000 if you're going to be doing a machine polish on it. But yeah, all right, there's 1500. There's a wipe with the towel, and when it's wet, the lens almost looks perfectly corrected. But I know that when it dries, that won't be the case. So again, the last step is I'm going to hit it with 2000 grit, and then we're going to move on to polishing. So the 2000 grit will almost make it pretty clear to see through. So obviously this video, if I don't do much editing, has been going straight through, and we're right about the 15-minute mark on this one lens. It's probably taking me a little bit longer because I'm trying to explain everything to you guys, but under an hour and you will have a set of headlights that are clear, so no more yellowed headlights. And one of the main things, I've been doing headlight restoration for a long time, but one of the main things that I noticed when I actually had to do it to my own car was the clarity at night. I didn't realize how much reduction in light I was getting from my headlights being fogged up. So if you're a consumer out there, you have a Honda, Toyota, Jeep, something with really fogged headlights, it's really imperative that you clear them or get them cleared up, because it's just, you'll feel like you're sitting in a brand new car with how much of the road you could see coming through the light. And with this 2000, I'm still getting quite a bit of correction out of it, so I'm going to keep going here. But they're actually coming out really, really nice. Getting a little wet. I have seen guys do some dry sanding, on the lenses, but it is a little bit smoother if you do the wet sand. And again, you could have the bucket with water like I have that I'm constantly dipping in, or you could use a spray bottle and spray it and keep it wet. But you definitely want to keep it lubricated. It's going to be easier to do that. And if you wanted to do circular motions, again, it's not a big deal. Someone's probably going to say that there's a really fancy reason for horizontal and vertical sanding versus circle sanding, but I just don't think that's really, in the grand scheme of things, that big of a deal. But you can see why this is actually more of a permanent fix than, say, a bug spray. Because bug spray is going to be super temporary. Anything that you can just spray on and walk away is going to be super temporary. I've even had people try to just get a can of clear coat and spray clear coat right over the oxidized lens, and that's probably one of the worst things you could do, because then you've locked in that oxidation. And again, while it may seem to be okay at first, it's going to be significantly harder to improve and actually put a permanent fix on it later. So with that, let's wipe that lens and dry it. Then we'll move on to our polishing. But that's looking pretty dang good right there. Dry this up, and hopefully you guys can see it. It's probably going to look foggy, and that's totally fine. Just dry that up. So that is ready for some polishing. And again, if you wanted to do hand polishing, that'd be okay. There seems to be a little bit of there might have been something a little bit deeper, but as you can see, as it dries, it's going to start really hazing up. That's okay. That's expected. So let's move on to the polishing. Again, I'm using the big boy rotary with the Meguiar's thin burgundy pad. I'm going to use M100. You could use a bunch of different other products, and you may go through a couple polishing stages to get this fully corrected. So I work at a really low speed. I'm just going to do this front half for you guys. I work at a really low speed because, again, when you're doing it with a rotary, you want to be very careful, especially if there's contour to the lens like there is in this one. You want to be very careful that you're not burning one edge trying to correct the other. So let's see how this comes out. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to do one more pass with polishing. I'm not worried about this top ridge because that's going to be closed, or that's not going to be shown. I get up into where the hood is actually going to close on it. So I'm going to do one more polish step with it. I'm going to step it up in speed this time. I'm going to go up to 12 to 1400 RPM and go from there. Close that notification out. There we go. think that's looking where I want it. Oh yeah, there we go. And you can see why I want the tape there, because I'm having to push right on that edge. So then, after I got that done, the lens is significantly clearer. What I'm going to do is take some Prepsol. I'm going to get all those polishing oils off the lens that I just used. Clear it up, because I want to put a coating on it, and I want to put the coating directly on top of the polycarbonate, not on top of any polishing oils. And I'm going to do a 2-part base coat, top coat application. You could also do this with like a rattle can of clear if you didn't want to do a coating, or it's not readily available to you to do a coating. And I leave the coating on there. I don't wipe it off. So it looks like it soaks in really nicely, and there's no runs that you could see or anything like that. And that's one thing you have to worry about with the rattle can, is the runs.